So I get asked quite often, why is it that the handsome men will rarely come up and approach me, and yet the average or even unattractive guys are the ones who come up to me all the time? What's the deal? And I imagine there's some fear in that question that's kind of being implied between the lines, and the implication is handsome men don't come up to me. Unattractive guys do approach me. Therefore, I am unattractive. And I'm going to dispel that right now because that's not true. If any guys are approaching you whatsoever, unattractive or attractive, even if unattractive guys are coming up to you, it's because they find you attractive, which also means attractive guys are going to find you attractive. If men find you attractive, most men are going to find you attractive. It's not like you're sequestered into some little box, okay? So that's the first part. As to why this happens as it does, there's many different reasons, but it pretty much all just boils down to ego and identity. Handsome men, not always, but there's a tendency. Very good-looking guys have a tendency to place their ego or their identity and base that around what they look like. And what this means is that they judge themselves solely by what they look like, and so they judge any results they get based on someone else's reaction to what they look like. Okay? So if a really good-looking guy who places his entire identity around what he looks like approaches a woman and he gets a no, he gets a hard rejection, he's going to assume the only reason why he was rejected was because he simply doesn't look good enough. We know there's a billion different reasons why the no could have actually been a no other than his looks, but he doesn't see it that way because that's the entire paradigm through which he views the world. That's the lens how he sees himself, and so he believes that that's the lens that everyone else would look at him through as well. In addition to that, not always, but a lot of really good-looking guys don't necessarily need to take as much of an initiative to approach, because there are going to be women that come up to them and make the approach for them, or at least women that are just going to make things easier, so they never really have to refine and develop their approach skills to be able to take the initiative and get good at making the first move, because they kind of have the crutch of their looks to be able to lean on. So that's as far as the handsome men. Now, why is it the average or sometimes even the unattractive guys are the ones who have the tendency to approach very often? And the reason is just the exact opposite. Those men don't have their looks to rely on. They don't have that crutch to form their identity around. So what often happens is, and again, not always, but a lot of these guys have to form their identities around something entirely different, but ideally something that they can control. And what this might mean is they place their egos around their courage, or their ambition, or their initiative, or just their general ballsiness to go up and say something to you. And what ends up happening is, once they've placed their ego around that thing, they keep doing that thing. Then they do it more, then they do it more, then they do it more, and they get better and better at doing this thing until they are the ones who are doing almost all of the approaching all of the time, because that's the thing that they're good at and they enjoy, and their ego and identity is based around that thing. And so it's kind of it's like a feedback loop. It's a self-fulfilling cycle. They practice this thing and they get really good at it, so they want to keep practicing it, and then that just becomes who they are. So you're going to see a tendency for those guys being the ones doing most of the approaching, because A, they have to, and B, they've probably just built that identity around that thing. So as far as how to solve this problem, to get the men that you would be more attracted to take the initiative to approach you, it can absolutely be done. And it's not actually very complex. It's certainly not as complex as most people would have you believe. But as far as going into the details of it, that's going to be an entire series of other videos. I just wanted to use this video to explain the why, as to why does this tend to happen. It's a very common thing. I've noticed it. Many of my clients have noticed it. Many, many women I've talked to have noticed this is just a very common question. So it's why I wanted to make a video on this, because it's just, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons as to why, but it almost always comes down to ego and identity. And obviously the reverse, the flip, is true for women as well. But I hope this explained the general reasoning, and I will catch you all next time.